Austin, Megan, thank you so much for doing this. Your husband and wife, and then you're also both tattoo artists. Austin, let's start with you. How did you get into it?
I was into art, I would say kind of minimally. I always took uh, just like the basic art classes throughout, grade school. It was always something that I felt like I had interest in, but I didn't. It wasn't anything very serious, and I never really considered it as a profession until actually after I graduated. Kind of what had happened was my dad had recently started to tattoo shortly after I graduated, and he lives in New York, so he lives across the country. But I was talking with him pretty regularly at that time, and he would tell me, things that he was doing in tattooing, and it was always super cool. And he came and visited me here in Utah, and we talked a little bit more in depth about it. And it was just something at that point I was like, oh, I definitely want to do that also. That's kind of where the initial start and idea of me tattooing came from.
Did you have a tattoo before?
No, I
Oh,
did.
all right. So you were like, this is kind of cool. I might want to do this and have some.
Yeah. Well, I always knew I wanted to be tattooed. Like,
Okay.
I knew I wanted sleeves when I was younger, but at that time, like, I couldn't afford to actually get tattooed. So it was just kind of a dream at that moment.
So did you just
Yeah,
start after that?
pretty much. I started not the best way I would recommend anybody to start, but I started tattooing myself. Um, I did my first tattoo and gave me my first tattoo ever shortly after I bought it. Um, it was not a good idea, but I do feel like I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't start that way. Because even when I did, like when I bought everything and when I started from home, I knew that I also wanted to be in a shop professionally. I spent a lot of time just kind of like just drawing before I actively seeked to get my apprenticeships. Um, so yeah, it was a it was a lot of work. It was definitely hard. But I think it was about a year and a half, somewhere in that time frame, I started looking into shops and asking around and seeing, if someone would take me, or even if tattoo shops accepted apprenticeships, because some shops don't. So, um, yeah, and luckily, one shop I hit like 12 or 13, and one shop was open to the idea of having me.
Great attitude shows persistence.
There was a lot of rejection. A lot of people looked at me like, dude, no way. There was also a lot of shops at that time, and this was 12, 11 or 12 years ago when this was a thing. There was also a lot of shops that they would apprentice, but they would apprentice for like $10,000. And at the time, I had nothing to my name, so it was tough hearing a lot of that and having a lot of people just be like, no, we don't want it. We don't want an apprentice. We don't want to teach anyone. So at the time, it was like, no, we don't do it, or we'll do it, but you have to pay us $10,000. So it was tough.
It's interesting to hear your story. And then also Megyn, it sounds like he kind of influenced you.
For sure.
Yeah. Talk about yours really quick. I know that you really liked art and you liked drawing. And tell me about having the art background and then how Austin kind of trickled into your life. And
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I wanted to be a tattoo artist in high school. I was in like all the AP art classes. Like that's all I did. I just went home and would paint and stuff. But there weren't many female tattooers, so that's a little intimidating, especially back. I was probably around 2007 when I started like actually like showing interest, because I had a boyfriend at the time go get tattooed at the same shop that the current owner of the shop we're at actually worked at. I didn't really pursue it just because it didn't seem very doable, but I also didn't really like try, you know. So many years down the road when I met Austin, obviously he was tattooing. We had been dating for a couple of years, and I was working at a piercing studio at the time, which was right next to his shop. I just started apprenticing. We were both just kind of like, why not? Like, might as well make something out of my art. And even then, I wasn't really like doing art. I kind of dealt with a lot of self-doubt and everything. I've always dated artists, and I kind of put myself below them. So Austin helped me build my confidence back up, and yeah, taught me how to tattoo. So
people come into our lives and inspire us and cheer us on, and it's neat that you're in the same field. Tell me about, so you're looking for an apprenticeship for both of you. How long was it? Is it like, it's obviously hard to find?
It's terrible. It's terrible. Apprenticing, it's the worst. It sucks. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Like,
That's okay.
you basically, so for the first 6 months of my apprenticeship, I apprenticed for 2 years. It was a 2-year apprenticeship. So, but for the first 6 months, it was basically just like reception, janitorial, like I answered phones, scheduled appointments, cleaned the shop, and drew. Like I drew a lot when there was spare time. You sort of just try and stay focused. And basically what had happened, to kind of sum that up, was when they reached out to me, they weren't actually even looking for an apprenticeship, but they liked what I had done in terms of like going in. I left, drawings with my phone number and email on it. And I think they sort of appreciated that I took that little extra step. So when they reached out to me, they were like, hey, we're not looking for an apprentice at the time, but they told me like, you can come work the counter, and if you work out, we'll teach you in X amount of time. So when I started, the shop that I was at already had 2 apprentices. So I guess in some way they didn't even initially hire me on as an apprentice. They were like, you can come to work the counter. If you work, then we'll teach you. So for the first 6 months, that's what it was. And then I would say for the following 6 months, you do a lot of sitting in with your mentor. They go through just about everything that you could potentially learn from someone in terms of tattooing. Needle depth, designs, literally everything. You just sit and watch them tattoo, and they'll try and teach you while you're watching. They'll tell you how to do certain things and stuff like that. And then after about a year, then they start letting you tattoo. You tattoo yourself first. That's like the first true test of where you're at, as far as learning. So tattoo yourself. They sit in and watch you. Depending how well you do, it depends on how the next few months will go. So basically, if you do a good job, they'll let you tattoo yourself more, or they'll let you bring in friends or family that are willing to let you practice. And then from that point, as long as you're doing well, then you get to start taking in like smaller walk-in tattoos. with limits also, like obviously they're not going to let you do a big back piece or anything crazy, but they'll let you take in, you know, small stuff to start actually become like a working apprentice. So that being a working apprentice was probably like the second half of the 2 years. And then yeah, it's basically there's no particular time frame or anything in terms of like how long an apprenticeship can or should be.
Okay.
A lot of it, I think nowadays, is just based off of how well someone is progressing as an artist slash tattooer. So if you're doing really well and you're not, you know, messing up tattoos or you're not having any problems in that sense, I feel like the more likely your mentor is to be like, okay, you're good, you can go out on your own kind of thing. So yeah, 2 years was how long my apprenticeship was. You don't get paid also until you actually start working.
Okay.
So for a year and a half, it was you just work for free, and it's tough.
I really actually appreciate that you didn't sugarcoat it. And because
I won't lie.
I know, I think that's great though. And I want people to see that because I think so often in a lot of careers, we highlight all the good stuff. And so it obviously seems
Yeah.
like, ooh, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? But in a lot of jobs, there's the training, there's the grunt work, there's like you have to build respect, you know, rapport, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you know, were honest about that. And so a young kid going into it, they would be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna start tattooing everybody who walks in just yet.
That's why I think it's really good that he's here, because like my experience was so much different. Like, although my apprenticeship was 2 years, I didn't have to do everything that he did, you know. So
yeah, tell me about yours.
I would set up his station and break down his station. So I had to learn about bloodborne pathogens and, you know, cross-contamination and all of that. But I mostly just sat and watched him. And then I started practicing on silicone, like hands and whatnot. And then, yeah, same thing, tattoo myself, tattoo friends, tattoo him.
Okay.
And then
Is it the shop owner who then decides, okay, you're ready to move on? Or
Yes. So
is it your peer?
it's basically based off of your mentor, since it's not it's more of a trade rather than you like pay to go to school and you get a certificate. It's so it doesn't line up with any of those things. So you don't get, hey, you're tattoo certified now. It's all just based off of what your mentor feels how well you're doing.
And
So
that does vary by state, by the way, and country. That's just in Utah that it's not like super strict. So
yeah, most places will require you to get like a business license, but in a weird tattooing, like you can't necessarily regulate it. So there's not like an official certificate saying like, hey, this person can tattoo
Sure.
and tattoo well.
Right.
So you'll, which is also like, you got to be cautious of, you know, if you're wanting a tattoo, to know and do your research on where you're getting a tattoo, because just because some place says and have a business license to tattoo doesn't mean they tattoo well. So
yeah.
so there's no there's no tattoo certificate for you.
Do you specialize in something? I know Megan, you specialize in flowers, and
we both specialize in large scale work. So it's very rare that we're just doing like one single little piece. It's a full sleeve or back piece. I specialize in floral and heavy black work, which is similar to my arm and like the negative space here. And then
I do a lot of large scale work, back pieces, sleeves, all the time. I have a very particular style It's kind of like a neo-traditional,
Like dark,
but it's all
spooky.
very dark and, kind of a lot of skulls and, stuff like that. But yeah, it's great. And it takes also time to get to the point that where we're at now. You have to build up a clientele and build up a reputation in order to bring in people who are specifically wanting what you do.
Sure.
So it takes a little bit of time to get to that point, but it's amazing, and it's worth putting in the effort to get to that point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of prep work
Yeah.
in everything that we're doing. Obviously in drawing like larger scale work, like we have to draw a lot in big pieces. So, being prepared and having all the steps before the actual tattoo need to be taken care of, because it's a lot of work. But like for the most part, like we get to make our own schedules. We get to pick and choose what we want to tattoo and what we don't want to tattoo.
Yeah.
And
if there's too difficult of a client, we don't have to tattoo them. Like, you get to a point where you kind of have control.
Oh, for sure.
We're in charge of everything. Like if there's something that we don't like or don't want to do, or if someone we don't want to deal with, like we're head management, so we get to take control and do whatever we want to do, truly.
So we rent space at our studio. We don't really have like a boss or anybody that we report to either. We are fully independent, so we just pay a certain every month, and that's that.
Okay. And I'm sure, so it probably depends on the shop, where there are some where you can do that, and then there's some where maybe you have to make a certain quota or certain things like that, or you kind of have to do whatever they come in and ask you to do, right?
Yeah, so typically in that particular situation, a lot of times when you're starting off, like in your apprenticeship, or you don't have a clientele or anything like that, a lot of times shops will just base what you pay them off a percentage. And when you're on percentage base, it's kind of more like, I don't want to say a regular job, because it's not a regular job, but it's like, hey, you have a set schedule, you need to be there for this set time, and you're taking appointments as they walk in. So you see that a lot in a more street shop setting. So for example, say you work in downtown Las Vegas, like the chances that you are working on your own specific clientele is less likely, because you constantly have a flow of traffic of people who just want spur of the moment tattoos. So a lot of times that's where that situation will come in, where you pay the shop based off of just what you do. So, and that makes it easier in that, like with the way that that's set up when you don't have a clientele, because say the shop is like, hey, you have a $1,500 booth rent, but you only tattoo 3 people the whole month. Like the chances that you're going to actually meet that set booth rent is very less likely. So therefore they're like, hey, you tattoo 3 people, we want
40%.
40 or 50% of what you did to keep your space here at the shop. So and that type of situation isn't as likely nowadays.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it still is. It
in the beginning,
still
it definitely
is, especially when you're starting out. Like there are shops that still very much base that, but there's once you get to a point in your career, to where you schedule your own clients and you have a pretty solid like schedule throughout the month, then that's like when you would make the switch from like, hey, I don't want to pay X amount of what I make every month. Now I just want, I want to take on a set rent and then you basically go from there, which is a little more common.
Some people love it, but
I could see that too, but I think that it really does make all that time and effort and that apprenticeship like feel like it's paying off, and you're kind of creating your own little niche, of like a specialty. And that's why I see that there are so many tattoo artists that have Instagrams and things where you see, okay, this is their style.
It's very much kind of like when you're doing walk-ins and taking in kind of whatever goes through the door, it's very kind of like customer service
Sure.
per se, like obviously to an extent, but you're sort of answering
to them.
And not everyone wants to be in that position. So a lot of people don't want to stay in that. Some people love it. Some people will work, they like just doing whatever.
some
and,
people need structure.
And having a good structure in terms of like, hey, I got to be to work and do this and this.
You do big pieces. So what is it like being with someone for so many hours? It's still, it's somewhat of customer service. You have to maybe chit chat. Do you keep the conversation going?
Yeah.
Do people watch movies? Do you tell them to be quiet? What's it like for you and your personality in this career?
I think for me, I tattoo primarily women. That's what I'm comfortable with.
Oh, okay.
And I have like a handful of really amazing like male clients. But when I have a client come in, it's my goal to be their friend. Like I don't want it to be customer service and fake. Like I want to build a genuine relationship with them and rapport, because our career is like the client is vulnerable, like especially doing like back pieces and stuff. Like they're exposing their bodies and trusting us with it. So I think it's important to build a friendship with them. So for me, the whole time, like I read off of their energy. Like usually the first appointment, they're really nervous and like either talk a lot or don't talk at all. And I just kind of like flow with whatever they feel, And then after that, like it's just kind of easy. I don't know how to explain.
You just kind of read them is what you
yeah, it's my goal to make them feel safe, and once they feel safe, then it's just like fun and like a good energy. I don't know.
You're adaptable.
It's just kind of like hanging out, like same thing, you sort of build a friendship with these people and make them feel comfortable, and we'll make sure that like I'm in control of the situation, but at the same time like making sure that they're good with everything. And then from that point, the way that we both have it set up is before someone actually even schedules an appointment with us, they basically have to allow us to draw something the way that we draw, like we're like, hey, this all sounds great, we're down to do it, but you also have to give us basically complete artistic freedom on the piece.
Yeah.
So therefore, before they even schedule or anything like that, we have them be like, yeah, like agree that that is something that they're willing to do to proceed forward. And then the way I do it, I will typically draw the night before, the day before, or sometimes even the morning of. I draw everything that I need to prior to the appointment. And then when I show up for the appointment, I typically will have something that they can look at. And then if they need to make adjustments or changes, I can usually 9 times out of 10, it's usually like, hey, could we change this little thing to this or whatever? And it takes a couple minutes to fix or whatever. And everyone, my clients are amazing. So everyone is always just like, they're like, I don't care what you do, just make it cool, make it, make me look good, and I don't deal with a lot of big adjustments or difficult clients or anything like that, because everyone, they know somewhat what they're getting into before they even book with me, because they've seen my work.
My last question is, what would your advice be for someone who's starting out? I know at the very beginning, Austin, you didn't recommend getting a tattoo gun from Amazon, but what? Yeah. What's some advice for someone who is thinking about this? Should they start drawing a ton? Should they try to look around and research and see what kind of tattoos they really like and maybe a genre they gravitate towards? What do you guys recommend?
Drawing a lot, for sure, I would say would be like number one in terms of getting your foot in the door.
Anything and everything.
Yeah, whatever. I would say drawing what what you're inspired or what you're about, I guess. And that's different for everyone, but if you like roses, draw 100,000 roses. I'm talking draw a lot, and make sure that you get to a point where you're comfortable with whatever it is that you're doing, and experiment with also different medias as well, whether it's just pencil or charcoal or acrylic, oil. Experiment with anything and everything, because that also helps in terms of just being a little more knowledgeable about everything that's out there.
Color theory. Also, having painting background helps with tattooing techniques when you get to that point.
But and being consistent also. I see a lot of times people saying oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and they go really strong for a month, and then you check back in with them and they haven't drawn in 6 months, kind of thing. It's consistency is also it's so important, because if you're not always keeping up on those things, then I feel like it's easy to put them off, or you find focus somewhere else. So if it is something that someone wants to do, putting that at top priority is so important, because getting into it, and once you're in it, and making it a career, it's a lot more work than TV shows make it out to be. You definitely have to put in the time and effort to make it worthwhile. And with it being such a I don't want to say a lenient, but a lax career, it's also very easy to sort of not do what you're supposed to, because no one's telling you hey, you have to draw every day. You know what I mean? It's easy to skip a day, and then next thing you know, you skipped a whole month and you haven't drawn a thing. So drawing a lot is a good start. Putting together a portfolio is also, I think, very important in terms of getting into it, because if you can't show someone, hey, this is what I do, how would you expect someone to even consider you for the part without showing them what you're capable of? So those are definitely some things that I would recommend in terms of the very first steps.
Throughout the whole time I've talked to both of you, I think maybe there can be a misconception about your occupation, thinking that it is so easy, anyone can do it, you do it whenever you want, it's so laid back. But from what you're saying and what's coming across to me is that, oh no, you have to have some dedication, determination, persistence. Austin, your story alone of, you know, you didn't think you were really good at drawing, you just kept doing it, you know, didn't even think you would be qualified. And then you thought the same thing, like comparing yourself to someone else. And then also being not kind of getting the door slammed on you, and then just keep going. It's an interesting thing because it is, you do have all this control now and you can live more of a relaxed life.
Yeah.
At the same time, when it's time to flip the switch, you flip the switch,
Yeah.
and you're taking time and you're dedicated and you're going to take that extra time to draw, and you really see that it's important. It's not just something that it's like a willy-nilly
Yeah.
occupation. This is
Never getting comfortable with your art. Like there's always going to be somebody better than you, and it's all perspective, and all you can do is just be
better.
inspired by other artists
Be
and
inspired
yeah.
for sure.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your wise words.